Warm welcome to Researcher's Desk. Today we have Eric Secher with us. Eric is a wonderful friend of ours, of all of ours, who we've heard before. He gave a wonderful talk with the title Enough is Enough. And Eric's going to now follow that up with Enough is Still Enough. We do have some technical issues today, so there's going to be a bit of neck sliding, but that's not going to be a problem. I'm also going to be participating and saying a few in this presentation, so I'll be leaving my camera on. Eric, a super warm welcome to Researcher's Desk. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm really unhappy because of this technical problems, but we'll try. I wonder, Alasdair, if you have the manuscript and you can put the pictures, so maybe you can just, when we come to this.
I have the manuscript, and so I will advance the slides.
I think so. I think we will see. Okay, I'm Eric.
As I know your manuscript, you can just start, and I'll because and then when
Sorry for these discussions, but I'm Eric Secher, and 1 year ago I was presenting for you this Enough is Enough, and now 1 year later I have some different perspectives. So please, next one.
Oh, sorry.
You take the next picture. Shortly, I'm a surgeon, work at St. Göran's Hospital. I'm married to Eva, and I'm the father of Sophie and Åsa. And my idea today was that I will have a short summary of this lecture last year, and I have asked Alasdair to read this manuscript today, and then I will follow up with some comments and reflections 1 year later. So please, Alasdair, I'm so kind of you to accept this arrangement. So please.
So I have the honor of speaking in your words, Eric, and I will read exactly as you've asked me to speak. Climate scientist Kimberly Nicholas has nicely summed up our situation with the words, it's warming, it's us, we're sure, it's bad, we can fix it. I trust her, what else can I do? But what are the difficulties? I am most concerned about the belief in continuous economic growth. All our political parties believe in this. Although some have a different message in their party programme. I really don't understand how this unsustainable idea is so resilient. We know that our house is on fire. And we have known it for almost 40 years now. But we are still waiting for the firemen. Maybe we must put out the fire ourselves. No one will do it for us. But then we need a completely different, non-competing, cooperating mindset. Otherwise, we are like the firemen without water. How do you turn an exploiting Homo sapien into a sustainable being? Not the great majority who stay within the limits of the planet, but we who live as if we have 4 planets or even more at our disposal. That is the big challenge. As a species, we are perhaps 150,000 years old. The genes we carry today are evolved, created, if you will, for a life as gatherers and hunters, an egalitarian existence that favored cooperation and generosity, to each according to need, from each according to ability, is perhaps a good summary. As ambitious and selfish as we are encouraged to be today, we still carry that generous instinct. As Peter Kropotkin wrote about in the book Mutual Aid, now it lies there as an undiscovered source of energy, the generous instinct that is waiting to be called upon again. The old indigenous leader sat talking to his grandson. He was sad about a tragedy that had occurred in the family. I feel like I have two wolves fighting each other in my heart. One of them is violent, hateful, and wants revenge. The other one is loving, forgiving, and compassionate. The grandson asks, "Which wolf will win, grandfather?" "The one I feed," said grandfather. I guess it's a little bit like that most of the time. That there are good sides within me that don't get fed, and bad sides that get far too much nourishment. But also, perhaps the most important, and at the same time the sad thing, namely, that I am expected to cope with what no human being was created for. As someone said, man can be underwater, but soon he must come up and breathe. Like all mammals, I have feelings, and in the end, those feelings dictate how I act, which explains why information, however authoritative and well-founded, so often fails to influence our behavior. During the COVID epidemic, there was a feeling of strong fear, and we acted, treating the crisis as a crisis. The climate crisis, which is a much greater threat, has so far not evoked similar feelings and did not lead to nearly as radical efforts and measures. Man is an emotion-driven animal that received reason as a double-edged bonus. Reason sits at the end like a small hat, but the little cap has developed delusions of grandeur. To make it even worse, you can say, navigating the modern world with a brain designed for antelopes and berry picking is not easy. Nowadays, we should let ourselves be guided by something other than our innate gut feeling. Thinking right often feels wrong. What feels right is often wrong. Thus, control from the inside must be replaced by control from the outside. A reasonable concept of rationality, as someone said, is an ability to formulate and follow principles. So incredibly sad, our deepest instincts to no avail. How can we feel and express the immediacy so that the climate crisis is viewed as the crisis it is, said a friend of mine in a speech, where he compared the climate crisis to an incoming tsunami. Maybe we are incapable of it, that we who live in abundance should both understand and feel the seriousness of something that is not yet completely obvious. We simply cannot handle that. First, we must fail. So what do? How can we, the mindless, abusive, exploiters, get out of this trap? Do we have to surrender and become obedient machines, formulating and following principles to succeed? Or can we remain human with feelings? Can what feels right also be right in the end? But there are bright spots, like the idea of leverage points by Donna Meadows. The heavy stone, which may represent our present system, is difficult to move if one is far into the leverage. With new rules of various kinds, such as how much biofuel to mix in the petrol, we are not moving the stone. But with changed fundamental values, we are moved far out in the lever and the stone can suddenly feel light. This is in line with how I perceive us to function as human beings. As I function, we seek meaning and context. if we are sufficiently convinced and motivated we are capable of anything. An inner transformation must be based on who we are as humans, our strengths, our weaknesses and limitations, and what we value most. Probably hope lies precisely in that last part, how we value. At best, it could mean that if we are honest about what is important, our deep-seated drives also come into better use. There are many great stories about how to prioritize in life. This is my favorite, from Heinrich Böll. A stylish tourist stands on the west coast of Europe and takes photographs. A poor fisherman dozing on the beach is awakened by the camera. The tourist wonders if the fisherman is not going out to sea. I've already been out in the morning and caught fish for 3 days, the fisherman replies. What happens if you go out every day, the tourist wonders. The fisherman shakes his head. With the money, you could buy an engine, another boat, a cold store, a smokehouse, a canning factory, and maybe a fish restaurant, and then the fisherman wonders. Then you could calmly sit in the sun and doze off and look at the lovely sea, says the tourist. But I already do, says the fisherman. As a society and as individuals, we live by the principle, never be satisfied. If we talk about strong values that guide us today, those that move us to the far end of the lever, then it is probably precisely, for God's sake, never be satisfied. Is that the value we must let go to bring about a real transition? This behavior would be more understandable if what we achieve by never being satisfied is really something better and more desirable, make us more content and happier. But how happy can you be if you can never feel satisfied? To constantly compare yourself with others, to constantly be jealous, to constantly incite, to constantly be encouraged to be suspicious instead of trusting, to constantly wonder if you are good enough. Unlike most curves we see these days, this one flattens out. It shows a well-established connection that above a certain income level, a further increase in income does not mean an increased quality of life. Here, then, we have a very human limitation, which gently integrates us into a larger community. We're simply incapable of valuing material abundance, and perhaps even unable to value continuous improvement, because we quickly get used to it and take the new for granted, which sounds very sensible physiologically. In the same way that healthy cells, unlike cancer cells, know when they have finished growing, now know when they have had what they need. Now it suddenly feels like an open goal. If it is the case that we are incapable of appreciating abundance and continuous improvement while holding as our most fundamental value never to be satisfied, are we not led behind the light? Cheated. We are the spectators in the emperor's new clothes. When we should be the child, Greta, if you will, and shout that the emperor is naked. The ugly summary would then be that we are in the so-called rich world, risk the possibilities of continued life on our planet by compulsively living in material abundance at the expense of others, without it making ourselves happier. Enough is enough. That's enough. We are incapable of appreciating abundance, but instead become very grateful when we manage to get out of a painful condition or a difficult situation. As someone said, happiness is that short moment when the pain lets go. I never feel so calm and at peace as when I am well cared for in a hospital. I end up there at regular intervals. And when that comfort with which we are constantly lured lays down like a wet blanket, what do we do? Then we voluntarily expose ourselves to various stresses where we feel unwell. And after that, hopefully experience that blessed moment when the pain disappears. If this recurring warm gratitude is something fundamentally human, it's undeniably hopeful. Hope that we can live in balance with the rest of the world and feel good at the same time. Hope that enough is enough, good and enough. What also often results from these exercises is that they stimulate another deficiency, namely our basic need to be creative. You're encouraged or even forced to solve problems on your own. You are not at the mercy of experts for a while. Being creative is perhaps the easiest way to be satisfied with existence. Many times I become aware that there are almost no limits to how much one can appreciate the smallest things, how much you can enjoy what costs nothing, that is, on a total collision course with our current paradigm. And at the same time, I am reminded of everything that comes to me as gifts, how grateful I am to be a part of this amazing creation a little while longer. Even if we can be convinced that we live at least as well on less, that enough is enough, a piece of the puzzle remains, I think, namely that which our sisters and brothers in the animal kingdom probably avoid, wondering about the meaning of our short earthly life. Ubuntu, I am because you are. So goes the expression that constantly recurs in Africa. My life becomes meaningless without you, without others. Not in the sense that we can't do without each other, but precisely in the sense that life only becomes meaningful when we exist for others. And so we are back with the original people, back in the self-evident generosity, to each according to need, from each according to ability, back in something far from the current of self-absorption, back to a state that could get us out of this crisis. If these thoughts take hold, if I become convinced enough, if I end up far enough out on the lever, it eventually tips over. It becomes impossible, or at any rate painful, to do that which is intended only to increase my own pleasure, or which I know will injure others. You must live as you learn, be the change you want to see in the world, said Gandhi. My friends, especially those...
Det är nedsatt till 35 kronor, det här smöret som jag köpte igår. Men det kostade 15 kronor mer. Ska jag presentera kortet?
You must live as you learn, be the change you want to see in the world, said Gandhi. My friends, especially those who aren't exactly on a carbon budget, are not slow to remind me of my own abundance. Giving up and sharing is not easy, nothing obvious for us people of abundance, but really that's what life is about in the end, giving up. We're all going to die. And in the fall of age, you can count on having to give up what you previously managed. It is easier to give up if you issue a promise. You don't want to face the shame of having broken your promise. Sometimes you don't need to use promises to avoid shame. I would never hesitate to give up everything or sacrifice my own life if it would mean that my own children would be saved in that way. And that is probably when it really starts to burn. The responsibility I feel for my own children, I should also feel for others. Eventually, the pieces may fall into place. We live in a time that requires us to think not only of ourselves, but just as much of others and those who come after us. At the same time, we know that we only get the feeling of living meaningful lives if we do just that. Giving up for myself, if I know it can help those who come after me, means a deep satisfaction. It gives my short life and meaning.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alasdair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and you just carry on and just say next slide when I should change slide.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alasdair. I'm very grateful you did this, and it's your reading is so much better. I understand that we are running out of time because of all the mess.
We have plenty of time. Relax and continue at your own pace.
Okay, as you understand, I cannot put the picture, so I have to tell you every time. I will try to make it short, but the big thing happening to me since last year that I finally have become a grandfather last summer. And you know, as Maria Wollrath has and many others have told, this make the big difference, and you really feel that you have to learn more and you have to act. And so you take the next picture. Yeah, this is my grandson. And someone is coming in now. Anna, Maria.
I've turned them off.
I turned them off. Yeah, this is my grandson, and I really have this pressure now. I have to do something and I have to learn more. So we take the next picture. I still, exactly as last year, very much concerned about this, talking about continuous growth. And this is what I want to talk more about in next picture. You know this report already now in 1972 about the limits to growth from Donella and Dennis Meadows. Next picture. And they had this model. It was an early model, computer model, and they showed, or they predicted, that this continuous growth will in the end lead to overshoot and collapse. And I think that you are familiar with this this graph. So let's take the next picture. And of course, they were heavily criticized, and this report was forgotten. But they have made updates continuously, and this is the last one. The limits to growth model still present 50 years later. And Gaia Harrington, the one who was making this report, and also has written a book called 5 Insights for Avoiding Collapse. And it shows, if you summarize it, that this is still valid. The predictions they were making 50 years ago. So next picture. Recently, just 10 days ago or something, the new party leader of the Miljöpartiet, it was she was starting with saying something like this. I want to quote this exactly what she said. Continuous growth on a planet with limited resources is not possible. We need prosperity, but we have had an economic development that did not take place within the framework of the environment. If politics does not step in and set the limit for economic development, we will not be able to cope with climate change. And of course, she was heavily criticized for this, and 1 or 2 days later, she has to explain and take it all back. Next picture. So this is the situation. We have these renewables and we are really happy for them. But sincerely, what we are doing is that we are adding these renewables above the fossil fuels. We are not replacing, we're just adding. Next picture. I saw this sign the other day at the metro, and it said that the escalator is closed. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause you traveling with us. And, you know, next picture, sometimes I feel that I also want to be apologized for what you are doing to us. The ecosystem is temporarily shut down. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause to you who live here. Kindly, your government. This is what it feels. And the next picture, some days I'm completely desperate and angry and sorry for everything. Then I take my sheet and I paint ugly messages and put on my balcony. I'm sorry for that, but this is how it feels some days. Next picture. Yeah, or sometimes I do like this. I put my tent aside the big road, and yeah, you can take the next picture. Yeah. And the next picture. And the next picture. Yeah, you know, sorry, the last one. You know, I read a lot and I try to learn more. And I think that some of these books I read, they are written by someone who is really depressed, and I'm infected by this depression too. Next picture. But I have also experienced something quite interesting, that if you join this community, so among people who they call themselves collapse aware. That means that they have accepted that, okay, we're in the middle of a collapse, and we accept it and we try to learn more. Then you have some kind of relief. It's a little bit strange, but this has really happened to me. So I've been listening to, if you look at the right at this picture, they have this Breaking Down Collapse, which is a podcast with Corey and Kellen, and they have 100 different episodes, and they dig deep down and try to find out, but they are all the time collapse aware. The book in the middle, I Want a Better Catastrophe, is also a very it's kind of a relief reading books like this. It's very different from the one from Jepson and the one I showed before. Next picture. The last 2 months, I've spent a lot of time with this great simplification, this podcast with Nate Higgins. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's and it's the same thing. They are very much aware. And here is so much knowledge, and these interviews are fantastic. So much knowledge and so much wisdom. Next picture. On this show, we describe how the energy, the economy, the environment, and the human behavior all fits together, and what it might mean for our future. Next picture. So, if you're not familiar with this podcast, I can strongly recommend it. As you see in the middle, there is one interview also with Dennis Meadow, who is still alive. He's 90 years old, and there are many of them. And the last episode was with Pella Thiel. I think you know her, and she's talking about ecocide. So next picture. You learn a lot about things like energy blind, next picture, and exponential. You know, as our human mindset, it's difficult for us to understand about exponential. We are linear in our mindset. And you know this story about the merchant, the king, and the chessboard. So on the 64 square, in the beginning, it was one grain and 2 grain and 4 grain and so on. And we are linear thinking. So we think, okay, 64 squares, that's not too much. But in the end, if you do it like exponential, that will mean that you will have 460 billion tons of wheat. And that is 1,000 as much as the yearly production of wheat in 1 year, 2010. So exponential is so interesting, and you learn a lot about it in this podcast. Okay, next picture. And you also learn about the difference between predicament and problem, next picture. And about complex and complicated, next picture. And superorganism, next picture. And you know, we're talking about caring. This is difficult to the sound of it is very similar. Care, you can care as much as it's unlimited, but caring capacity, our caring capacity is not limited. It's not unlimited. Next picture. Hopium, you know this word. I think it's a good word. You talk and you have net zeros and you have goals and things, but without action. And words without action is hopium. Next picture. And maybe one of the most important thing is all these social dilemmas. That mean we try to make collective action, but it's very difficult or even impossible because of self-interest, and maybe because we don't trust each other. The lack of trust generates this social dilemma. Next picture. This is one of the episodes with the psychiatrist Ian McGilchrist about the difference between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, and why we have a right and a left hemisphere. It's so interesting. And so the left hemisphere is reason and science, and the right hemisphere is imagination and intuition. And the meaning, if you can say so, is that the right hemisphere that can have the big picture should be in charge, and the left one should be the servant. But we have made the opposite. The left one is in charge. Next picture. So you recognize this picture, and by this lecture, I more fully understand the situation. Next picture. Yeah, there is another lesson or lecture with this Patrick O'Falls. I can also recommend you to listen to this one. Next picture. And as a wise person, every book he is writing is smaller than the one before. Next picture. This is the last one. He's 92 years old. And this is the last one he has been writing. Electrifying Titanic. That means that we have the same ship, the same iceberg, and so on. But the only thing we are doing that we are making the motors electrified, and that makes no big difference. Next picture. So in the end, maybe my grandson is not helped by me listening to interesting podcasts. I think that he wants us to act. So I will try to summarize how I think that we can do this. Okay, next picture. I think the first part is this individual responsibility, that enough is enough. We should be happy with, and I think this is not a big problem. We can do this. This is really possible. Next picture. And we can feed this characters we have deep inside, that we feed our generosity and so on. Next picture. And when we see that someone is in need, we will help. We will help when we have the possibility. Next picture. And I think that we can take this to an even deeper level. I so happy and glad I was reading this book. It is, for me, this was a game changer. Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's a professor in biology, but she's also indigenous, American indigenous. So that means she has the right and the left hemisphere. And her key message is that everything begins with gratitude. And if you are really grateful, and you can be grateful for so much, to belong to this world, and this that has been evolution for millions and years. And if you really have this feeling of gratitude, you want to give back. So next picture. How can we feel and express the immediacy, as Alasdair said? And this is her answer, or maybe a try to answer: where information and fear failed, love and story can succeed, question mark. Next picture. So this is all this, and all the first lecture I had last year is about this individual responsibility. But, and this is the real but, we also need some kind of system change. And you always, at the demonstrations and so on, you see this signs of system change. Next picture. And next picture. And there are very ambitious, maybe you know about this Earth for All. This is by Johan Rockström, and they have as a baseline, they have this limits to growth, and they try to find out the main areas where we have to change about poverty, food, energy, and so on. Next picture. Personally, I'm very, very, very attracted to this book. Of course, immediately when you hear the capitalism, the end of capitalism, maybe you shut down. I don't know, but next picture. But maybe you have seen this picture. And finally, I think I at least a little bit understand why it's so difficult to stop this continuous growth. Look at this picture. You have this biking, and this is like how the capitalistic system is working. You grow or you die. You ride or you fall. It's not possible to just degrowth a little bit. Either you are riding or you fall. If you stop riding, you fall. If you stop growing, you die. Next picture. And at least a little bit I understand this system now, I think, about the debt and investment and the need for profit and growth. We have to understand it's a dynamic system. Next picture. And she come to the conclusion that what we need is to rule with scarcity. And we have to use rationing, ransonering, rationing. We have, and that is what we are looking for all the time, an economy, a surviving economy. And in this book, she describes that this, what was they were doing during the Second World War in England so successfully. And the message is that the government tells or decide how much we should produce and divide it equally among people. So this is to rule with scarcity, completely different from our system we have today, but this could be something that is possible for the future. Next picture. So this is my summary. It's something like a Trinity, you know, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. So next one. You have the base of understanding. You have all the knowledge and all the wisdom, and you have this. I've been talking so much about now about the individual responsibility, and as the third part, you have the governance. The governance. Next picture. You can also see it like this. I think you appreciate it, that the understanding and all this knowledge is represented by the researcher's desk, and then we have me. And then we have Amanda Lind. I think she can be a good governor. And you can take next picture. Or you can, if you look upon it as values, you have the curiosity, all the curiosity that you as researchers have, and we should go on with that. And my value is gratitude, and the value for the governance, you can say it's severity, or maybe there is a better word, I don't know. Next picture. Or you can put it like this. For me, it's enough is enough. For the governance, it's the same, enough is enough. But for you as researcher, enough is not enough. You should continue to be curious and find out. Okay, next slide. So now you know when you're out in the streets and screaming, what do we want? Enough is enough. What do we want? Enough is enough. Okay, next picture. So in the end, finally, I ask myself, whatever happens, who do I want to be? I think that's a good question. I mean, we don't know what will happen, but you can always ask this question. Who do I want to be? Next picture. I want to be the best version of myself. Thank you. Next picture. I'm sorry that we run out of time. There is very little time for discussion, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was a beautiful presentation.